This is one of the most important videos I've done in a long time. This is about an expose, a leak from the BBC to Reform UK. Richard Tice initially posted this saying it's an exclusive story that Reform UK can reveal evidence that the BBC bosses are colluding with Sadiq Khan, the London mayor, to silence the anti-ULEZ, the anti-net zero ULEZ voices. BBC then lied to cover their tracks, but our whistleblower evidence is clear, says Richard Tice. So we have the story now, and we're going to go through the details. It's absolutely fascinating. So David Maddocks, who's the political editor at the Express, published this. So we have an insider from the BBC, a senior producer, who has leaked these documents to Howard Cox, who's the London mayoral candidate for Reform UK. And it tells us a lot about the mainstream media. Obviously, this channel, me, on a regular basis, we talk about the mainstream media, the cover-ups and the censorships, or the way they deal with issues and debates. But this is a perfect example. Okay, so this senior news producer has leaked these messages about how they are censoring or basically shifting the narrative when it comes to ULEZ. Then they say that these plans are going to be damaging a lot of people, not just Londoners, but also outside of London. Now, the leak went straight to Howard Cox, who obviously has a history of leading these campaigns. For example, the Fair Fuel UK campaign, that it was relatively successful, obviously. It's got a good track record. It said that journalists at the BBC, wanting to run stories now, needed top-level clearance over something that is said to be a major electoral issue in the London mayor election and the general election, obviously, as well next year. As if it's some sort of secret defense, Minister of Defense issue. Anyway, now the BBC producer was told in an email to news staff from Dan Feynman, who's a senior news editor at the BBC South East, that if any platforms are doing a story on ULEZ charges in the South or in the Southeast, that's me, we now need to do a mandatory referral to Jason Horton or Robert Thompson regarding the outstanding complaint and with the Mayor of London, which is very live at the moment. Now, James Horton is the director of production, the local services at the BBC News, and head of BBC South London, South Today, and also BBC South East. That's obviously he's got a lot of hats, by the way. He's also the acting director at BBC England, so very multitasker. Great. Now, Howard Cox was told by this BBC whistleblower that all ULEZ stories are now a mandatory referral. Okay, what does that mean? We can't report without BBC bosses saying we can. Now you tell me, Howard, that doesn't stop people from doing it in case Sadiq Khan complains about them too. Unreal to have such an edict put on us, but by a politician and my bosses running scared of Khan. I also believe the BBC London investigation into ULEZ has now been paused because of the Mayor of London's pressure on the BBC. Why does Sadiq Khan have so much power over the BBC? It's quite interesting. I don't think he's scary. I believe that he's got enough people inside the BBC who are sympathizers, who are just doing his bidding anyway, his dirty work. Now, Howard Cox, the candidate, has accused the BBC of undemocratic collusions with the Labour Party. He did approach Tim Burke, who's the editor of Politics England and Complaints Editorial Standards, and many others. Mr. Burke said that these kind of referrals are not unusual. I don't think that's a good explanation, Burke. Okay. He says, and it's part of a normal senior editorial oversight of output as stories develop and progress. We have full editorial independence over the contents we produce. Yeah, right. And we will cover the ULEZ debate from a range of perspectives without fear or favour. I believe you, sure. Now, the producer, the whistleblower, claimed that the BBC was saying one thing publicly to appease while asking staff to act in another way and control the narrative. Now, Howard Cox obviously has now spoken to David Maddocks, the political editor, saying, we all know the UK's perennially demonize the drivers. We know that, and that pay the BBC's license fee. Have never got any impartial news coverage or balanced reporting on driving issues. It is even more alarming and very disturbing that the BBC's news agenda is now even being dictated to by London's Mayor Sadiq Khan. Now, the BBC have come out, the spokesperson, one of them said, impartiality is at the core of the BBC's mission and public purposes. So we will continue to cover the Euler's debate from a range of perspectives. Just repeating yourself over and over and over again. We also have a response from the Mayor of London's office saying, as you would expect, our press and communications teams are in regular contact with the BBC and other media outlets, but not Mahyar Tousi, about Sadiq's work to create a safer, greener and fairer London for all. Oh, so lovely. This can occasionally include correcting or clarifying any inaccuracies that may arise in media coverage. Are you kidding me with this? I mean, how is this a real thing? How are we allowing this to even happen in a so-called democratic society? Now, those who've been going around defending the BBC's existence, at this point, my fight is escalating because until now, we've been simply advocating for a lot of people to cancel the license fee. And some people, even on this channel, leave comments saying, I feel better now. I don't pay the license fee. I've cancelled it, so everything's fine now. But it's not fine because enough people are still paying it, the organization still exists, and the BBC are a huge propaganda machine. So even if me or you individually we don't pay, the fact that it still exists the way it is still damaging the country. It is still damaging the British culture and our stability in our society. Everything is being controlled. We're not surprised about that, but this is taking it to a whole new level. This is literally a level that you see in America and CNN. We shouldn't allow it to happen. We must start fighting back, and it's not just about us cancelling our individual license fees, but the whole thing. Campaigns against the BBC. Defund the BBC and watch Mahyar Tousi instead. Anyway, we're going to come back with more updates for you guys. I'm Mahyar Tousi, and we are the media.